Well, hello there. Welcome back. This is Softcore Detachment, the podcast for people who are done starting over. I'm Catalina, strength coach and nutrition educator, and today we are going somewhere that I've been building up to for a while, peptides. If you spent any time in the fitness, wellness, or longevity spaces recently, you've heard this word. Maybe you've seen it in supplements or online communities, in conversations with that big dude at the gym. Maybe someone you know is using them and you nodded along like, yeah, totally. And then you quietly Googled it later. This episode is for you. No judgment, just information. This episode is foundational. We're going to cover what peptides actually are, the science behind how they work, the different classes and what they're used for, and why they've exploded in popularity. What you need to know about sourcing them and responsible use in a space that's largely unregulated and full of noise. I'm going to be totally upfront and honest. I use peptides personally, regularly. I'm going to be doing a dedicated episode on my specific stack in the future. But I'm not going to talk about that today because I think you need the foundations first. If I just tell you what I'm taking without context or explaining the why behind it, I'm not going to be helping you. I'm just going to be adding to the noise. So let's build that foundation together today. At the most basic level, a peptide is a short chain of amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. You already know this. You take protein, you eat it. When amino acids link together in a long chain, you get protein. When they link together in a shorter chain, typically anywhere from 2 to 50 amino acids, you get a peptide. Your body produces peptides naturally and constantly. They function as signaling molecules. Think of them as the body's internal communication system. They carry instructions from one cell, tissue, or organ to another. Produce more of this, repair that, regulate this process, slow this one down. Peptides are not foreign to your biology. Your body speaks this language fluently. What makes therapeutic peptides interesting is that scientists have identified specific sequences, either naturally occurring or synthetically, designed to mimic natural ones that trigger very targeted biological responses. Rather than introducing a hormone directly into the body, many peptides work upstream, telling the body to produce or release something itself. It already does this. That mechanism is a meaningful part of why they're attracted to so much research attention and why they differ fundamentally from something like exogenous or external hormone therapy. Okay, now this is important. When we talk about peptides in the context of fitness and wellness, we are largely talking about research compounds. Most of these are not FDA approved for the uses being discussed. They exist in a legal and regulatory gray area. But keep in mind, a lot of things that we consume and do on a regular basis are not FDA approved. For example, tattoo ink. And we do that on the regular because it's awesome. I'm going to come back to that a little later on, but I want you to have that context from the beginning so that nothing I say is misleading. Okay, let's zoom out and talk about why this conversation that everyone is having right now. It didn't come out of nowhere. A few things converged. First, the science matured. Peptide research has been happening for decades in the academic and pharmaceutical settings. What's changed is the barrier to assessing that research. It dropped significantly. Information that used to live in journals behind paywalls is now synthesized, discussed, and is distributed in online communities really quickly and easily. If you do like a hashtag search on TikTok or Reddit, it's all over the place. It's all over podcasts and on YouTube. People who are motivated to understand their biology have more tools to do so than ever before. Second, the longevity movement went mainstream. Figures like Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, and others have brought performance biology, optimizing not just how long you live, but how you function while you're living, into the cultural conversation in a real way. Peptides fit naturally into that framework because many of them are specifically targeted at the processes that degrade with age: growth hormone production, tissue repair, inflammation regulation, and metabolic function. Third, and arguably the biggest, is the GLP-1 conversation opened the floodgates. When Ozempic and Wegovy became household names, the general public got a crash course in the idea that targeted peptide-based compounds could produce significant physiological effects. GLP-1 agonists are peptides. That didn't go unnoticed by people already paying attention in that space. And fourth, honestly, people are frustrated. They're doing the work, they're eating reasonably well, they're training constantly, and still feel like their body isn't keeping up. I have to say, especially in that 35 to 55-year-old demographic, and especially women in perimenopause. The conventional toolkits, eat less, move more, sleep better, stops being sufficient at some point for a lot of people. And they start looking for what else is out there. Peptides are part of that answer for some people. Whether they're the right part of the answer for you specifically is a very individual question that you need to do the research on and think about for yourself. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Peptides are not one thing. They're a category with different subsets. Let me walk you through the main classes that you're going to encounter in fitness and in wellness contexts. The first one I'm going to go over is growth hormone peptides. It's a very discussed category, especially in the gym world. These are peptides that stimulate the pituitary gland to produce and release growth hormone, either by mimicking growth hormone releasing hormone or by acting on ghrelin receptors to trigger secretion through a separate pathway. Growth hormone declines with age, specifically starting in your late 20s and continuing throughout adulthood. It plays a central role in body composition, fat metabolism, muscle repair, sleep architecture, and recovery. When it declines, you feel it across all of those systems. Growth hormone peptides in this class are used to support and restore that production. The reason this approach is appealing over direct growth hormone injection, which does exist and it is used medically, is that working through your own pituitary preserves the body's natural feedback mechanism. It's a lot harder to overdo it. Your body can regulate the response rather than receiving a fixed external dose. The next class, again, very popular in the gym world, is tissue repair peptides. These are peptides that accelerate the healing of specific tissues like gut lining, tendons, ligaments, muscle, and connective tissue. Some of the most well-researched in this category have shown significant effects on wound healing, inflammation reduction, and recovery from injury in preclinical research. Athletes and people dealing with chronic injury have driven a lot of the interest here. If you've ever had a stubborn tendon injury that just won't resolve, you understand the appeal of something that can accelerate that process. All right, I'm not going to lie, this is where I started my kind of quest into peptides. Skin, hair, and collagen peptides. This class overlaps with the beauty and aesthetic industry significantly. Certain peptides stimulate collagen synthesis, promote hair follicle health, support skin elasticity, and have antioxidant and anti-inflammation properties at the cellular level. Some of these are delivered topically and some systemically. This category has seen enormous commercial growth and is probably the most accessible entry point for most people. Collagen peptide supplements have been mainstream for years now. The more targeted compound in this class go considerably deeper than what you'll find in collagen powder, but the foundational concept is the same. And then again, metabolic peptides. We've heard a lot from this category recently. These influence metabolism, insulin sensitivity, mitochondrial function, and energy regulation. Some have shown potential in the context of metabolic disease, obesity, and cellular longevity research. This is a rapidly evolving area, and some of the compounds here are among the most cutting edge in the research pipeline. Now, this next one is exciting. We've all seen these movies and thought, wouldn't this be amazing? It's not quite as dramatic as some of the movies would lead us to believe, but cognitive and neurological peptides do exist. It's a smaller but growing category. Peptides that cross or influence the blood-brain barrier and affect neurotransmitter systems, neuroprotection, focus, and mood. Less commonly discussed in fitness contexts, but present in the longevity and biohacking space. Okay, here's where things need to get real, and I gotta be straight with you, because I think vague disclaimers don't serve anyone. Most of the peptides discussed in fitness and wellness communities are classified as research chemicals in the United States. That means they are legal to purchase and possess for research purposes. They are not approved by the FDA for human use outside of specific pharmaceutical contexts. They are not legal to sell for human consumption, and though they are widely available, widely used, and widely discussed, it is a gray area. It's real. It's complicated, and pretending it doesn't exist is not a responsible way to have this conversation. Keep in mind, however, this is changing rapidly. The current administration is talking about declassifying this, and that's going to change the pricing, the availability, and the legality of these substances. So what this means practically is you are largely on your own in terms of medical oversight, unless you find a practitioner who is knowledgeable and willing to work with you. Not all doctors are. Functional medicine physicians, sports medicine practitioners, and anti-aging or longevity-focused clinicians tend to be more familiar in this landscape. The research base varies significantly by compound. Some peptides have robust preclinical research and a meaningful body of human case data accumulated through widespread use over the years. Others are newer, less studied, and carry more uncertainty. Knowing the difference matters. And again, the regulatory environment is shifting. The FDA has increased scrutiny on certain peptides in recent years. What's available today may not be available in the same way tomorrow, or in a week, or in a month. Staying informed is part of using this space responsibly. I am not telling you to use peptides. I am telling you that if you're going to engage with this topic seriously, which clearly many of you are, or you wouldn't be listening to this episode, you deserve accurate information about the landscape that you are navigating. Okay, where are you going to get them? If there is one thing I want you to take away from this episode beyond the science and what they actually are, it's this. It is an unregulated market, and sourcing is everything. Because peptides exist outside of standard pharmaceutical regulation for the most part, quality control is entirely dependent on the manufacturer. There is no oversight body ensuring that what's on the label is what's in the vial. And the gap between high quality, properly formulated compound and something that is impure, mislabeled, or outright counterfeit can have very real consequences for your health. Here is what you look for in a reputable source. Third-party testing. A legitimate peptide supplier will have a certificate of analysis from an independent laboratory verifying and identifying the compound, often called a COA. Okay, certificate of analysis. Not internal testing, third party. If that documentation isn't available or current, that's a problem. You need to know that they have verified what they're selling and what you're receiving. Not by an internal lab that can kind of fake it or fudge it, but by an external third-party laboratory. Transparency about manufacturing, where it's made, under what conditions, safety, sterility, by whom. This information should be accessible and easy to find. Proper storage and formulation. Peptides are sensitive compounds. They need to be handled, stored, and packaged correctly to maintain stability and efficiency and efficacy. How a company handles this tells you a lot about how seriously they take their quality. Community reputation over time matters. The peptide research community is active and frankly pretty good at identifying bad actors. Suppliers with long track records of consistent quality get known, and so do the ones that are cutting corners. Do the research and listen to the gossip. It matters. I will be talking more about sourcing specifically in future episodes because I think it deserves its own dedicated conversation. There's a lot more than I can say right now in this first episode. We're just starting this conversation. Before you do anything with what you've learned today, here's how I want you to approach it. Start with the research, not the product. Before you ever look into a specific peptide, understand the mechanism. What does it do? How does it do it? What does the research actually show versus what the community claims? Those are sometimes two different things. Just because something is supposed to do something doesn't mean it does it. Number two, find a practitioner if you can and if you want to. I know this isn't always accessible or easy, but if you can't find a functional medicine or longevity-focused physician who's familiar with this space, that conversation is worth having, even if just for a single appointment to establish a baseline. You want someone who can evaluate your individual health picture and not just hand you a product and, charge you. Number 3, understand your why. What are you actually trying to address? Sleep, recovery, body composition, physical skin health, hair, nails, beauty. Are you trying to turn back the clock? The answer to that question should drive the conversation about which class of peptides, if any, makes sense to you. Using something because it's popular and trendy is not a reason. If you have actual goals that you're trying to address, start there and work your way backwards. Don't just hop on the wagon because it's trendy. And number 4, and this is super important for a lot of people, don't start with multiple compounds. If you ever move forward with any of this, start with one thing so you can understand the effects and rule out any possible side effects. Stacking multiple peptides immediately makes it impossible to isolate the barriers and the effects, positive or negative. The peptide conversation is not going away. The market is growing, the research is evolving, and more people than ever are engaging with this topic very seriously. I think that's a good thing when done with curiosity, critical thinking, and appropriate caution. I think it's problematic when it's driven by hype, poor sourcing, and zero medical context. My goal with this topic now and in our future episodes is to be a voice that actually helps you think about it clearly, not to scare you off, and not to turn you on to something that you don't need, not to oversell it, just to give you real information so that you can make informed decisions. Think about your own body, your own goals, and go from there. If this is not something you're interested in for you and for what you're focused on, don't jump on it just because it's trendy. Coming up, I'm going to do some dedicated episodes on the specific peptides I use, why I chose them, what I've experienced, and how I think about them in the context of my training, my overall health, and my age, and what my aging goals are. That's a conversation I'm really looking forward to having. I love being transparent in this scope, as well as I am about my nutrition and my training. Until then, do the research, ask the questions, and as always, be skeptical of anyone who's making it sound simple. It isn't, but it is interesting. So until then, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I wish you all the luck on your journey. Be critical, ask questions. And until next time, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good one.
Thought that I would be a bit at peace by now. Yeah, you're lying in the shadows of my room. Oh, always heard your voice, I forget the sound now. You're awfully quiet while I cry out for you.